Ladies and gentlemen, we are under attack. Our very way of life, our very existence is threatened. They have already taken over Washington. They continue to destroy our Constitution. It is time to take back our country now.
The Wise Conservative Show, bringing wisdom back to politics.
We are officially launching into the general election campaign this week with the Republican National Convention, and what so far has been a very strong showing from some very impressive Republican speakers. Hello, my name is Dakota Wise. With me is my co-host, Connor Wise. This is, of course, the Wise Conservative Show.
We actually, these past couple days, have been watching, I'm sure some of you have been too, the Republican National Convention. Now, it's been really interesting this year, actually. Donald Trump has dealt with a bunch of people trying to set up the best speakers he possibly could. And I gotta tell you, it's really been impressive, the lineup that he's brought out.
It's really paying off, I believe, too. He's generating a lot of interest and a lot of support. But, of course, you have the liberal media, and we'll get to that later. We're going to talk about some of the media and just how hypocritical they've really been on covering Donald Trump versus letting Hillary Clinton get away with basically, breaking the law. But for now, if you've actually taken the chance to watch the convention, it's been very impressive. A lot of very good speakers.
Very impressive.
Yeah, a lot of very good speakers, a lot of very good material. And I have to say, it really feels like it's starting to unify the party. It really feels like we have momentum right now. Now, of course, they're in a room with a bunch of Republicans, but I believe that we're going to pick up some of the independent vote. Of course, Donald Trump has really been focusing on trying to present himself as a family man and show that he doesn't have some sort of twisted billionaire family that's so dysfunctional.
That approach, actually, though, trying to come off as this family man, has really been working. He's had 3, I believe, of his family members actually give speeches so far, and he's scheduled to speak tomorrow night or tonight. So he's had a bunch of his family actually involved within the convention. And of course, throughout his entire campaign, he's had them actually working alongside him to get things done throughout the entire election cycle.
And I think what's most surprising is that a lot of Donald Trump's family, his kids, his sons and his daughters, and of course his wife gave a wonderful speech the first night. They come off as normal, well-adjusted people. They really don't seem like the dysfunctional billionaire children that we're used to seeing.
And Donald Trump Jr. actually touched on that in his speech as well. He's like, well, we actually have a clip. We'll play it a little bit later. But I've been really impressed with all of their speeches.
And it's not just his family that's been doing so well. We've seen Chris Christie deliver a wonderful speech. We saw Ben Carson. Just so many speakers who are really bringing out what's wrong with America and really hitting a nerve with a lot of voters. And it really brings up to the point. Right now, the world is in chaos. The country is in chaos. And they're making a very excellent case on why should we be voting for the Democrats when, look around us, the world is screwed up. Our country is screwed up. We have police officers being gunned down in the streets. We have essentially evil taking over the Middle East. Why are you going to vote for that same party that's really turned the world into this chaotic mess? And the Republican Party is trying to be the party of law and order and of unity throughout the country.
And we can see that this unity it's expanding. We had a bunch of different speakers who previously had completely hated Donald Trump give their speeches. The Speaker of the House, he gave an amazing speech.
Paul Ryan.
Yeah, Paul Ryan. Thank you. I couldn't remember the name. So he gave an amazing speech. He's now pulling his full support behind Donald Trump. Tonight we have Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio giving speeches. Not exactly sure what they're going to talk about. There's a lot of speculation within that. But we can see that there's these big names who previously were against Donald Trump. They're actually speaking at the convention. So there's a lot happening.
Of course, these Rubio and Cruz speeches are going to be essential to really squashing the last remnants of the already shrinking Never Trump crowd. If Rubio and Cruz get up there and throw their support behind Donald Trump and say, listen, we might have had our differences, we might not agree on everything, but at the very minimum, they need to say the one thing we can agree upon is Hillary Clinton being president, getting to choose who sits on the Supreme Court, is something that we can't even contemplate. That can't happen.
And that's been a central theme throughout all of the speeches in this entire convention. People from even his wife to all the way down to Ben Carson, they've all said that this is a very dire situation. If Hillary Clinton is elected, this won't be the America that we know and love anymore.
This is really coming off as sort of a last stand at preventing these 8 years under Obama from becoming the new normal, from allowing the entire country, the Supreme Court, our policies, what we stand for, to shift to the far left like Barack Obama has tried to do.
Yeah, all of them have basically said that Hillary Clinton will be basically a third term of Obama. And that's exactly right. That's exactly what we've been saying for a very long time, and I know a lot of Republicans have been saying it. Hillary Clinton will continue these hurtful policies that Barack Obama has put into place throughout these past 8 years of his presidency.
Now, we were so impressed with so many of these speakers, and we really wanted to share them because I realize a lot of people don't have the time, they don't have the willpower to sit there and watch the convention on hours like we've been doing. So we really wanted to share some of these speeches with you. There's just too much to be able to play the whole speeches. So we've kind of taken down and condensed what we could and really came down to a lot of the highlights from the speakers that we really enjoyed watching. So first up on our list is
Melania Trump,
who gave a very good speech the first night. Now, of course, the speech is mired in controversy because of the quote-unquote plagiarism.
We'll get to that after this short clip, though.
But go ahead and take a listen.
I have been with Donald for 18 years, and I have been aware of his love for this country since we first met. He never had a hidden agenda when it comes to his patriotism, because, like me, he loves this country very much. On July 28, 2006, I was very proud to become citizens of the United States. The greatest privilege on planet Earth. If I'm honored to serve as First Lady, I will use that wonderful privilege to try to help people in our country who need it the most. One of the many causes dear to my heart is helping children and women. You judge society by how it treats its citizens. We must do our best to ensure that every child can live in comfort and security with the best possible education. My husband is ready to lead this great nation. He's ready to fight every day to give our children the better future they deserve.
Now, Melania's speech was really interesting because it brings into question the entire narrative that the left has spun about Donald Trump, about him being anti-immigration.
That's really the biggest insult that they've thrown towards Donald Trump throughout this entire election. They've said he's anti-immigrant, he's racist towards all immigrants, yet his wife is an immigrant herself, and this speech really highlighted that for those who didn't really know that she was an immigrant.
This speech is very important because we're seeing an entirely different side of Donald Trump that we really haven't seen before. And that's what's been so essential and key about Donald Trump's family playing such an important role at the convention.
This Melania's her speech, as it is circled around some controversy, we mentioned that earlier, even though it is circled by that controversy, it was one of the most powerful speeches that I've heard throughout the entire convention because it just shows that even though she was an immigrant, she came here legally, she did it the right way, and she's proud of the country that she lives in. She's proud to be a U.S. citizen, and she wants to actually help this nation. She has already set forth, because every First Lady has their one plan, their goal that they want to achieve throughout their husband's presidency, and she's already set it out. She wants to help women and children live better lives. And so I'm interested to see if she does become the First Lady, how that actually plays out.
Now, of course, the left has taken every opportunity they can to slam Melania and her speechwriter, because some of the wording was somewhat similar to what Michelle Obama said. It was not a word-for-word plagiarism, and there's only so many ways you can say, "My husband's a wonderful man, vote for him."
It was the part, it wasn't in this clip because it wasn't really the biggest part of the entire speech. She was just saying that my parents taught me to work hard. Well, everyone's parents teaches them to do that, and that's the part that they're freaking out about, because both Michelle and Melania said that their parents taught them to be hard workers.
It's a non-issue, and yet we're seeing a lot of the liberal media pick up on this stronger than they ever even picked up on the Hillary Clinton scandal.
Yeah, I liked Donald Trump just tweeted out today. He's saying that the media is putting more attention into Melania's speech than the FBI did into Hillary Clinton's email investigation.
And unfortunately, that seems to be totally true. You can't turn on CNN or MSNBC or any of the other liberal media sources without seeing one of their official news anchors, sitting there and just slamming how terrible she is, how she plagiarized Michelle Obama. It's number one, it was not word for word. Number two, if they were going to plagiarize a speech, I can guarantee it would not be from Michelle Obama.
They could have picked up way better people who give speeches than that.
For reals. But so moving on to the second day of the convention, and someone who I thought gave a very, very excellent speech, and he had the crowd on his side. He had them standing up. He had them cheering. He had them chanting. He gave a very, very inspiring and really empowering speech to the audience. They were feeling it.
It was a really good speech. Take a listen to the highlights of it.
Of course, Chris Christie is the speaker.
But everybody, this election is not just about Donald Trump. No, it's also about his Democratic opponent, Hillary Rodham Clinton. Now, in the past few weeks, we've seen the Justice Department refuse to prosecute her. Over the last 8 years, we've seen this administration refuse to hold her accountable for her dismal record as Secretary of State. So let's do something fun tonight. Tonight, as a former federal prosecutor, I welcome the opportunity to hold Hillary Rodham Clinton accountable for her performance and her character. So let's ask it. Hillary Clinton, as an inept negotiator of the worst nuclear arms deal in American history, is she guilty or not guilty? Next.
So actually during the speech, we had the entire convention chanting, "Lock her up, lock her up."
That's what's happening right now. It's a little hard to hear throughout this audio, but just about everyone was screaming at the top of their lungs, "Lock her up," obviously in regards to Hillary Clinton.
Chris Christie obviously struck a nerve with the crowd.
We need to demand more than what Hillary Clinton offers for America. Because, see, we know exactly what 4 years of Hillary Clinton will bring. All the failures of the Obama years, but with less charm and more lies. It's time to come together and make sure that Donald Trump is the next president of the United States. I am proud to be part of this team. Now let's go out and win this thing together. Let's go get him. Good night.
Chris Christie gave a very energetic speech. He had the crowd on his side, and I thought it perfectly highlighted just all the scandals, all the failures surrounding Hillary Clinton. And it was a long speech. There was a lot to it, and a lot of areas he highlighted where Hillary Clinton has failed.
Yeah, there was 15 minutes basically. Basically 14 of those 15 minutes were him going through and listing Hillary Clinton's failure, not only as a Secretary of State, but throughout her entire political career. and then asking the audience whether she's guilty or not.
Of course, this convention hall is very angry at the fact that Hillary Clinton seems to be able to play by a different set of rules from the rest of America.
She's gotten away with a lot, actually.
Right.
From this speech, she did a lot more than even I knew about, and this speech highlighted all of those faults of Hillary Clinton.
I thought what was really effective is that he went through a lot of the foreign policy mistakes she made, whether it was in Syria, whether it was in Libya, all over the world. And it really helps derail the narrative that Hillary Clinton is trying to spin about herself, that she has the most experience, that she knows the world, that she has dealt in foreign relations and foreign politics before, and that Donald Trump doesn't know what he's doing, and that she's the experienced candidate. It was very effective at taking that, well, sure, you might have a lot of experience, but you failed at the same time. Whenever you were dealing with other nations, you failed the United States. You failed to keep us safe. I thought it was very effective at what he was trying to do.
Definitely. It was able to basically unify. That's the whole goal of this entire convention. It was able to unify every conservative, even some independents, around the notion that Hillary Clinton is the enemy to our freedoms, to our liberty, to everything that America stands for. She has failed time after time in regards to this.
And that's really what's been essential to unifying the conservative party, the Republican Party, is the fact that we might not all agree with Donald Trump. We might not all like him as a person or his policies, but we really, really, really don't like Hillary Clinton. And so that's really how we've been unifying the party, and it seems to be working thus far. So I'd say that narrative has been very effective.
Oh, definitely. A year ago today, I would have expected a split within the GOP, a bigger split than happened, one that actually caused real damage.
Oh, right. We talked about it on the show before, how the Republican Party was heading towards a split, how there was no way we would ever unify behind a candidate. And yet, largely, that's what we're seeing happening right now.
More and more so every day. But, of course, another speech that took everybody by they all loved it, was Ben Carson's speech. He walked out onto the stage to astounding cheering. Everyone was happy to see him. And he gave a great speech, and we have a little bit of highlights of that one as well.
I think what was most surprising is that the speech is super energetic, which is really not something I would say Ben
energetic
Carson
for Ben Carson.
Right. So go ahead and take a listen.
I'm not politically correct. And I hate political correctness because it's antithetical to the founding principles of this country. And the secular progressives use it to make people sit down and shut up while they change everything. It's time for us to stand up and shout out about what we believe in. This is a nation where every coin in our pocket and every bill in our wallet says, "In God we trust." So are we willing to elect someone as president who has as their role model somebody who acknowledges Lucifer? Think about that. Now, Donald Trump, he understands this very well. He understands that the blessings of this nation come with the responsibility to ensure that they are available to all, not just the privileged few. It is evident in his passion for the American worker. It is found in his desire to put his considerable skills to work on behalf of American interests, not his self-interest. I'm proud to support Donald Trump, an extraordinary businessman, the right leader for a time such as this.
Now, Ben Carson's speech was really important, and he was really focusing on the evangelical vote. That's a group he pulled very well with during the primaries.
Throughout the entire speech, he talked about one of Hillary's role models. I don't exactly remember the name, but someone that she deeply admires, and she's been quoted to say that she admires this person, who dedicated a book to Lucifer. So, of course, Ben Carson attacked her throughout his entire speech on that one point, trying to get, as my co-host just said, the evangelical crowd to realize that, hey, she likes some dude who is going for the devil.
So that was a very interesting spin. I kind of expected it with Ben Carson, but I thought as a whole, it was a very well done speech. I'm not really sure if it's going to win over any voters. I believe Donald Trump probably has to be winning with the evangelical vote. They really don't go for the Democratic Party normally, so it wasn't really a crucial speech or a crucial group of people to target.
Well, any speech that's attacking Hillary Clinton is pretty crucial.
Right. But as a whole, though, Ben Carson is going to prove absolutely essential during this race. Winning the White House is a team effort, and people like Ben Carson, Chris Christie, his entire family, his kids, his daughters, his sons, having people like this who are so eloquent and who can deliver these amazing speeches is going to be absolutely key to winning the White House.
He's had them throughout his side for the last few months of actual primary campaigning, and then the start of the unofficial start, and they've been giving speeches, and one man has really stood out from everyone, especially with this speech last night, and that, of course, could only be Donald Trump Jr. He gave a very well-given speech. It was well thought out. It was, quite honestly, the best speech we've heard throughout this entire convention, and honestly, I think he has a future in politics.
He really portrayed himself and his family very well, and we got to see a side of Donald Trump that we haven't seen thus far. I was downright impressed with Donald Trump Jr., and I completely agree. This is a young man who definitely has a future in politics. Go ahead and take a listen.
For the first time, parents no longer think that their kids will be as well off as we were. We've lost the confidence in our leaders and the faith in our institutions. But remember one thing, we're still Americans. We're still one country. And we're going to get it all back.
This narrative right here is absolutely key. He's really trying to unify not just the party, but the nation. Because the Democratic Party is very good at spinning things off as one group against the other. You'll see it whether it's Black Lives Matter or the lower classes. They try to divide the country. And what Donald Trump Jr. was really trying to do throughout the speech is say, you know what, we need to stop this, Black Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter. We need to come back to the notion that we're all Americans. We all matter. We all need to care about each other, and this country needs to work for all of us.
And the last time we really saw that message get across as much as it has these past couple of days was with Ronald Reagan. So this is really kind of hitting the sense that they're doing the same thing that Ronald Reagan did back in the 80s.
We're going to get it back better than ever before. We didn't learn from MBAs. We learned from people who had doctorates in common sense. Guys,
of course, Donald Trump Jr. is talking about himself and his 4 other siblings on their upbringing with Donald Trump as their father.
Like Vinny Stelio, who taught us how to drive heavy equipment, operate tractors and chainsaws, who worked his way through the ranks to become a trusted advisor of my father. It's why we're the only children of billionaires as comfortable in a D10 Caterpillar as we are in our own cars. I've spent many time with many great Americans who have served this country in the military, and they know what's at stake. When we have weak leaders in positions of power, Americans risking their lives for our freedoms are less safe. Hillary Clinton is a risk Americans can't afford to take. She says she'll issue executive orders to take away Americans' guns. She wants to appoint judges who will abolish the Second Amendment. Yeah. Just look at how effective those laws have been in inner-city Chicago. Rather than prosecuting real criminals, she would strip hard-working, law-abiding citizens of their rights to protect themselves and their families. A president who will unleash the greatness in our nation and in all of us, who will give the hard-working men and women who built this great country a voice once again. That president can only be my mentor, my best friend, my father, Donald Trump. And when we elect him, we'll have done all that. will have made America great again, greater than ever before.
There were so many great things about this speech that I almost don't know where to begin. What really struck me, starting from pretty much the top of the speech and working down, what really struck me is that Donald Trump Jr. was very effective at portraying himself like, yes, we're rich, but that doesn't mean we don't understand the plight of the middle-class Americans. We want to make all of America as rich as we are.
Now, that's really a hard line to walk there with, talking about how they've had such a better life than other people. But he really pulled it off. He pulled it off. He's like, well, yes, we do have all this money. We do have the funds to be able to purchase this fancy private school or go to the best teachers there are. But you know what? We still went through some problems, and we still had teachers that didn't have these fancy degrees. We were taught by working class Americans on how to do things that just about every American should know how to do.
It was a stark difference from what Mitt Romney tried to do in 2012. Mitt Romney almost had this notion that he was ashamed of his money, that he wanted to hide it, and the Democrats utilized that to really divide him from the rest of the country. But what Donald Trump and his children are trying to do, and I think very effectively, if you watch the speech, is that they're trying to spin that, you know what, we're going to make all of America like this. Every middle class, every lower class, they should have the option to go to awesome schools like we did. They should be able to move up the ladder. Because Donald Trump is largely a self-made man. He started with $1 million and turned it into $1 billion empire. We all should be able to move up like we did and have the same opportunities. And I thought it was very effective, and I thought it was really interesting to see. Now, of course, he moved on to talk about the Second Amendment, and I really loved that he brought in, look at Chicago. Gun control in Chicago's not working. I've always used this as, an answer to gun control. It just doesn't work. It doesn't stop criminals. It only affects law-abiding citizens. And Donald Trump Jr. made that case very well.
Of course, Second Amendment rights is one of the biggest issues throughout any conservative in this nation. And he really hit it hard in that middle to end part of his speech. He hit it hard. He did bring up the examples of Chicago. He brought up the examples of how it hasn't worked in the past. And then he even connected it with Hillary Clinton on how she would definitely try to take away that right, through whether it be through executive orders or placing radical liberals into the Supreme Court. So he really articulated those arguments very well. And once again, that was using the same argument to unify, because we can't have Hillary Clinton. It's been a message that we saw throughout all of these speeches, and it's a message that is working, quite honestly.
This speech was very, very well done, and I really think we're going to see a lot more of Donald Trump Jr. He's just so eloquent, especially when his father sometimes isn't the most articulate of speakers out there. It's really a stark difference, but I think they complement each other well, because Donald Trump Jr. was so great at conveying this message that he was trying to get across.
Definitely. He had a very great speaking voice. He was just amazing at that speech. I can't think of any other words because it was just that good.
Now, of course, next week we're going to have to look at what Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz are saying tonight. But really, in the 2 days we've seen thus far of the convention, I've been very, very impressed with what we've saw. And I really think the Democrats are going to have to bring their A game at their convention if they want to live up to what a great, really unifying party convention we've seen here today.
It's definitely been a great convention, but we actually have to take a quick commercial break. Don't go anywhere, guys. This is the Wise Conservative Show.
The idea behind Youth Revolt is to let them, these liberal professors, let them know that we are here and we're ready to fight.
Youth Revolt. Speak without fear.
8 years with Obama,
and now no one knows what bathroom to use.
The Wise Conservative Show, Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, only on Youth Revolt.
Tune in to Millennials Rising, 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time on Sunday nights, for a conservative outlook on pop culture and American politics. Together we can reinstitute values back into our nation's young people and help create an alternative path away from the mainstream liberal agenda. Tune in to Millennials Rising, 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, Sunday nights, only on Youth Revolt. How's it going, everyone? Jason Veely here. I want to tell you about YouthRevolt.org, the ultimate media network for young conservatives. Youth Revolt features a lineup of young radio hosts, columnists, and video bloggers. These are some of the most courageous and articulate millennials out there. Give them some support and check out YouthRevolt.org. YouthRevolt.org. Speak without fear.
Hey, little boy, you want some free college?
Bernie Sanders, that creepy uncle your mom warned you about. The Wise Conservative Show. Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Only on Youth Revolt. This is the Wise Conservative Show. You're here with your hosts, Dakota and Connor Wise. Now, of course, right now we just got the notification that Marco Rubio is delivering his speech right now. So if anything interesting pops up, we'll let you guys know. I really wish I had a way to broadcast the speech. It's something we're going to have to work on. But if anything interesting happens, you guys will be the first to know. So right now we want to talk about voter ID laws, because in an election year like this, it is just so essential that we're able to ensure that Americans are the people voting and not anyone else. We really need to be working to stop voter fraud.
Now, of course, us talking about this is coming out because federal appeals court just ordered Texas to change their voter ID law. They had set it up so that people would actually need an ID in order to vote in elections, which we both agree with. But a federal appeals court, I believe the Fifth Circuit of the courts, has ruled that it is discriminatory and against the Voting Rights Act.
Now, Texas was offering voters up to 7 different ways to prove that they're an actual citizen. But the Federal Appeals Court and the Obama administration were making the claim that this was discriminatory against Latino and African American communities.
Now, this is, of course, because they're saying that those people are often in poverty-ridden communities, and they have no way of acquiring an identification.
Now, this is complete hocus pocus.
Hocus pocus.
Because so many things in our nation require a voter ID law anyway. Voting is perhaps the greatest responsibility, the greatest duty we have as Americans. And the fact that you don't need to show an ID to vote is simply outrageous. So to highlight just how ridiculous it is that you don't have to show you're an American citizen to vote, we came up with a list of things you need to show an ID for when you vote. Now, number 1, and this is really kind of flies directly in the face that those in the poor communities can't get an ID, is the fact that you need an ID to sign up for welfare. Now, this is something that a lot of people don't even realize, but to actually receive welfare, you need an ID. So if these communities are so stricken with poverty, apparently they can't even get welfare because they don't have an ID.
Not to mention, you can acquire IDs. You don't need to pay for some of these state-issued IDs.
And if it's really such a big deal, there should be some sort of program where if you really need that much help and can't pay the minuscule fee to get an ID, we should be able to give them out for free then. You know, if it ensures that we're going to be able to check people's IDs when they go to vote, I'm okay with funding that.
Oh, definitely. And they already do have IDs that you can get through with no charge. So this whole notion that this is affecting poverty-ridden communities, it's not even true. There's no truth to this or fact to this whatsoever. They cited for this that it's because that oftentimes they can't acquire an actual birth certificate as well.
Well, that flies directly in the face of being able to vote in the United States. You can get a birth certificate, even if you lost it. You can get it from your county, you know, where they hold the records. But if you can't prove you were born in the United States, if you can't prove you're an actual American citizen, then hell no. You shouldn't be voting, okay? But the Democrats do this because they know 99.9% of voter fraud would go to help the Democrats win an election.
Well, definitely, especially in Florida, where in the 2012 or 2008 election, there were cases of people voting who had been dead already. These people, of course, voted for Obama. And it's just cases like this that it's necessary to have voter ID. It's necessary to keep this fraud from actually happening for electing the highest position, the highest honor within the civilized world. And that, of course, is the president.
Now, of course, you already need an ID for the simple things like buying alcohol, renting a car, buying cigarettes, renting a hotel room, paying for a hotel room, pretty much anything. To get on a plane, the list is long. And at no point are the Democrats saying that it's discriminatory to require an ID to do these things, and yet the only time they seem to care is when we're voting. And that's not an accident. This is Democrats trying to maybe, you know, turn a blind eye to voter fraud. And it is absolutely outrageous. It's our greatest duty and responsibility, and yet we're going to not require an ID. I don't understand the logic behind it. I really can't.
Yeah, I've never understood it either, and many Texans now are very infuriated with this decision because they, of course, just as us, believe that it was just to prevent fraud. Well, it was just to prevent fraud, and they're just not understanding the mind of that Fifth Circuit.
Now, changing gears a little bit, we're going to go back to Donald Trump and what exactly is happening in Ohio. Of course, Ohio is the state where John Kasich hails from. It is where the convention is taking place, Cleveland, Ohio. And they're also the only state that seems to be raising a little bit of a ruckus at the convention.
Yesterday, actually, Ohio, all of the delegates, after Trump was announced to be the official nominee, got up and left. That, of course, is happening after all of their delegates went to Governor John Kasich.
Now, of course, they were the only state who sent a majority of their delegates to Kasich.
Yeah.
And now Kasich is refusing to attend the convention, and he seems just infuriated at the fact that he's not the nominee when he never really stood a chance to begin with, and he's not even a real Republican.
No one who's actually went out through this entire election cycle and paid attention to every candidate voted for John Kasich. I'm sorry, but that's the truth. Anyone who actually looked at the issues wouldn't have voted for Kasich.
Kasich is for abortions. He's for LGBT communities.
He's for Common Core.
The list goes on and on. He seems to have more in common with Hillary Clinton than he does the rest of his party.
Let's see. Representative Jen Renacci. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this last name. Renacci. He's a representative from Ohio, and he basically, in response to Kasich, he told Fox News that this is a team sport and the team has to come together. That, of course, is trying to nudge his own governor into finally putting his support behind Donald Trump. But that's just not going to happen, honestly. I mean, John Kasich, he has a huge ego, which, I mean, a lot of people think Trump does. But John Kasich, this ego is out of control at this point.
It's really... It reflects poorly on Kasich, but it's not going to influence the election results whatsoever. Kasich has 14 supporters nationwide.
If that.
I mean, I'd say it was going to influence it because he's the governor of Ohio, and Ohio is such a critical state to win in November. But it seems that the rest of Ohio's Republican leadership is sort of conducting a mutiny around Kasich and saying, you know
definitely.
what, you may not like Trump, but we really don't like Hillary, so yeah, we're kind of getting on the Trump train.
Yeah, John Kasich, he has to switch his support, honestly, because all of these the people within Ohio, they look to him for guidance. He's their governor. And if they don't come on the side of Donald Trump in this election, well, we all know that no one can win the election without Ohio. So if they don't come onto Trump's side, this election could be very difficult to win.
But except for this minor hiccup with Ohio, the convention has largely been civil and unified. The first day we saw that Never-Trumpers trying to conduct another rule change to get it in favor of Ted Cruz. But what really strikes me is that these people are really starting to die out. They weren't able to drum up the support in order to even get Ted Cruz a nominee at the convention. And they really need to stop at this point. The American people have spoken, and Donald Trump overwhelmingly won the popular vote. He overwhelmingly, he beat Ted Cruz's delegate count by almost 3 times as much. The American people spoke, and Donald Trump is our nominee. I'm not asking everyone to shut up and get behind him, but at this point, if you're a Never-Trumper, what are you hoping to accomplish? What are you hoping to accomplish? Because if you're willing to let Hillary Clinton go for 4 years and think, well, it can't be that disastrous, you're totally losing sight of the bigger picture. Right now, the bigger picture is the Supreme Court, and if Hillary Clinton gets to decide the fate of the Supreme Court for not just the next 4 years, not just the 8 years, but for generations to come, that is essentially the death of the conservative movement.
She's talked about putting Barack Obama himself on the SCOTUS.
A man who has demonstrated that he has no regard for the Constitution.
Ironically, he's a constitutional lawyer.
And yet, we're even considering the fact that Donald Trump might not be the appropriate candidate. Really? You don't have to like everything he says. But number one, they say, well, he's no different than Hillary Clinton. Well, then it really shouldn't hurt if you vote for Donald Trump, since you're willing to apparently vote for Hillary Clinton. Some of the Never-Trump people are. Number two, really? Donald Trump has shown throughout the primary process that he really has more in common with the Republicans than the Democrats. All of his policies might not be the social conservative message that so many people want in the Never-Trump camp, but a lot of his key issues are. And it's a building block. It's a base for the conservative movement to go off of. A constitutional conservative like Ted Cruz would be awesome again. But let's get moving in the right direction. He might not be everything we want in a presidential candidate, but at least he's going to get the ball rolling towards someone like Ted Cruz.
Yeah, I've said this a lot on our show before. Donald Trump might not be the perfect conservative, but he's way better than Hillary Clinton when it comes to following the Constitution. I don't understand how any Never-Trump person can even consider not voting for Donald Trump in this very dire election. This election, and they touched on this in a lot of the speeches today that we just showed you guys, that this election is one of the most important elections we've seen in generations. So anyone who is willing to put this up for the grabs between Hillary and Donald, they're just not thinking. They're not thinking about what's actually important. They're not thinking about how this country runs, and they're not thinking about anyone other than their own petty differences.
Even if you just vote for the Supreme Court, do it. Donald Trump is here for 4 to 8 years. At the minimum, we'll start to see the ball move back towards where we want to be. And that's a good start. I'm not saying you can't criticize Donald Trump. I'm not saying you have to like him. But we really need to stop the Never-Trump movement because it's proving detrimental to the party. We're in what appears to be the closest race since 2000. 2008, 2012, those were really kind of blowouts for the Republican Party. But Donald Trump is in the running for becoming president. He's really up there, to a lot of people's shock.
In a lot of polls, he's ahead of Hillary Clinton.
So right now we're neck and neck, and we need all the support we can get, and the never-Trumpers are really not going to help the party any. We really can't afford 8 years under Hillary Clinton, and then maybe Ted Cruz wins the nomination. We can't count on that. The country might be too far gone at that point for Ted Cruz to make any sort of difference.
This chance that they're trying to take it's stupid that they're even trying to take it. It's childish that they're willing to risk it.
We're playing Russian roulette with the Supreme Court, and we all know that in this era of politics, the Supreme Court holds pretty much the most power. They really get to decide what happens. And if we have Hillary Clinton elect people to the Supreme Court, if we have them take a liberal majority, you can kiss your Second Amendment goodbye. You can kiss your First Amendment goodbye. The country, you can kiss the 10th Amendment goodbye, what's left of it. The country won't resemble anything. The Constitution will be, at that point, literally just a piece of paper.
Yeah, they're not going to follow it. We've shown that throughout these last 8 years, throughout Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State. We've seen the disregard for the Constitution, even all the way back in Bill Clinton's term. So, of course, Hillary Clinton is going to completely disregard it, not follow it whatsoever. Any liberal at this point doesn't really understand why we follow the Constitution. They always say, oh, it's just an old paper written by old white men who had slaves. Well, folks, that's not how it is, and you and I know that. We know that the Constitution was there in order to protect us, protect our rights from the government. So why in the world would anyone be willing to play around with the possibility that we're going to lose those rights? Because the second we lose one right, we're not going to keep our other ones. They're just going to drop off like dominoes. If we lose our Second Amendment right, which would be the first one we lose under Hillary Clinton, we won't be able to defend ourselves. We won't be able to defend the other rights. Because that's why the Second Amendment was put in place, to defend the rest of the rights. It was put second for a reason. Because they knew it was one of the most important rights, God-given rights, that any human could ever hold. And that's why we cannot even play around, and that's why this Never Trump movement has to come to an end before it's too late. It has to come to an end before we can't even talk about not supporting someone because we don't have the First Amendment right to. It has to come to an end before our country is that similar to North Korea. Because that's what's going to happen if we allow them to continue to take our rights away.
Now, folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the hypocrisy of the liberal media. Don't go anywhere. This is the Wise Conservative Show.
The idea behind Youth Revolt is to let them, these liberal professors, let them know that we are here and we're ready to fight.
Youth Revolt. Speak without fear.
8 years with Obama, and now no one knows what bathroom to use.
The Wise Conservative Show. Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Only on Youth Revolt.
Tune in to Millennials Rising, 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time on Sunday nights, for a conservative outlook on pop culture and American politics. Together we can reinstitute values back into our nation's young people and help create an alternative path away from the mainstream liberal agenda. Tune in to Millennials Rising, 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, Sunday nights, only on Youth Revolt. How's it going, everyone? Jason Veely here. I want to tell you about YouthRevolt.org, the ultimate media network for young conservatives. Youth Revolt features a lineup of young radio hosts, columnists, and video bloggers. These are some of the most courageous and articulate millennials out there. Give them some support and check out youthrevolt.org. Youthrevolt.org. Speak without fear.
Hey, little boy, you want some free college?
Bernie Sanders, that creepy uncle your mom warned you about. The Wise Conservative Show. Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Only on Youth Revolt. Alrighty, folks, this is the Wise Conservative Show. You're here with your host, Dakota and Connor Wise. Now, taking a look at the live blog coming out of the Republican National Convention, it appears Marco Rubio has finished his address. He addressed the audience via a video, and Ted Cruz is speaking right now. Now, Marco Rubio, in his speech to the convention, pretty much threw his support behind Donald Trump. He blasted Clinton for Benghazi and said that she was not qualified for the office of president. He then went on to say that Donald Trump takes the threat of Islamic radicalism serious and will cut taxes, and then he called for the party to unite. He said, and I quote, "After a long and spirited primary, the time for fighting is over. It's time to come together. It's time to win in November." And he was met with a standing ovation. Then Ted Cruz came on, and by all accounts, the audience was very receptive. There was no audible booing, and there was a long, sustained standing ovation for Senator Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz talked about what made America unique and exceptional compared to the rest of the world. He then went on to talk about the criticisms that much of America has for the President Obama administration, Hillary Clinton, and just the Democratic policies and party on a whole. He then went on to express support for Donald Trump's immigration idea, particularly the wall. He said, "We deserve an immigration system that puts America first. And yes, building a wall to keep America safe." And I quote, or that was a quote. Now, apparently, after that, a Trump, Trump, Trump chant broke out as the crowd tried to sort of push Cruz out a bit. But on a whole, it seems Ted Cruz is maybe not throwing his exact support behind Donald Trump, but he's really trying to make the case that, you know, you might not exactly, pretty much the same case we were making before the commercials. You might not like Trump, but not all of his policies are bad, and he's better than the Democrats.
This is exactly what was needed from both of these speakers. Quite honestly, I'm surprised that Marco Rubio called for unity. He was one of Donald Trump's biggest criticizers throughout the entire primary cycle. And of course, after he suspended his campaign after the Florida primaries. So I'm actually really surprised that they called for unity. It's really good that he called for unity. All of the more establishment sympathetic Republicans who were never Trump, they'll definitely see that as a welcoming into the Trump train.
Now, I want to end this episode with a little bit of talk about the media and just how tired I am of having to be constantly on the defensive because the liberal media is so good at twisting the words and creating an anti-Republican, anti-conservative narrative. And so much of the nation falls under the trap of just watching CNN or MSNBC, just listening to their obviously liberal hosts and taking it word for word and absorbing it. And they don't look anywhere else. They're not going to watch the speeches from the Republican convention. They're not going to do any of their own analyzing. They're just going to take in the media's spin on everything. And if there's one thing I've realized during this primary process and now the general election, the media holds so much power within the United States.
If we look at the reason why Donald Trump actually did so well in the primary election, it's because he was able to get a lot of media coverage. It's the same reason why any establishment candidate, because they always get media coverage, does so well. The media is a key player in any election, and we're seeing that they're all, with the exception of Fox, against Donald Trump right now.
And it's really, it's so hypocritical. We have Hillary Clinton, who has so many scandals behind her, so much lying to the American people. And this is just what we know she's lied about. This is what she's been caught in. And yet, the liberal media ignores that and will try to make stories like Melania's speech a big news article when it was really not that big a deal. And it's really starting to grow. I'm growing tired of it. There's really nothing we can do, but at the same time, they hold so much power in a democracy, and there needs to be free access to information. But we have a media which largely spins that towards the left, and I really believe it has a huge effect. If you just look at the headlines that are coming out about the national convention, you see things like the RNC Day 1 scaremongering from the Republicans, where largely that's not what was happening. We were talking about the fact that law and order has been lost in the United States. We have police officers being gunned down at record rates. We have a world that is experiencing a terror attack, what now amounts to every 2 weeks. The world is largely in chaos. That's not scaremongering. That's accepting the truth. And yet you'll see the liberal media using headlines like that.
But you also saw with a little bit of uproar yesterday, 2 days ago, my bad, trying to get a rule change in the convention. You saw headlines throughout CNN and Politico and MSNBC saying that there was so much divide within the Republican Party, that there was basically a civil war among Republicans going on, when it was just a little bit of uproar from, maybe like 20, 30 delegates. And so they're still trying to blow everything, every little thing that happens in the Republican Party out of proportion to make it seem like we don't know what's going on, to make it seem like we're so disorganized and we don't actually care about America, but rather about ourselves instead.
And so many of these quote-unquote news anchors are just up there talking. They don't know what they're saying. And yet we have people listening to them. It is totally infuriating. Watch the speeches. Watch the candidates. Come to your own damn conclusions and stop being spoon-fed by the people who are trying to influence the way you think. So pretty much just to finish out this episode, I want to give a quick update on the Ted Cruz speech. The crowd has begun to boo him and chant for Donald Trump because Cruz failed to mention Trump by name when he was talking about who to vote for. And Cruz responded with a smile, and I quote, he appreciates the passion of the New York delegation. So keep an eye on that as we finish up this podcast. We'd like to thank you for tuning in once again. It really means a lot when we see the support coming in. You can find us at youthrevolt.org or Spreaker.com/TheWiseConservative or as always at Instagram under _wise_conservative or at Facebook under Youth Revolt. So until next time, guys, we'd like to thank you for tuning in. It's been a pleasure hosting you for the last hour. And as always, good night and God bless.